Blockchain. This is how Arturo Bris is explaining blockchain in his recent book and when he's teaching to executives and bankers at the Institute for Management Development in Lausanne. He is in close-up discussions with central bankers across the globe to reinforce the strategy for blockchain launch. Which role Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies will play in this equation? Are they worth investing? And this is what we're about to find out. In your recent book called Blockchain, you quote Warren Buffett saying, "In the digital world of technologies, the rear window is cleaner than the front window." How ready are the technologies and how ready is the regulation in our economies for blockchain launch?
It is a good question because I think the technology is perfectly ready. We have been improving and adapting the technology to the new times more and more. I think people are not ready yet. I think that's the main problem with blockchain technologies. Regulation is certainly ahead of what individuals and companies know about blockchain and that they can give to the technology. But as a basis for future business models is very well developed.
So the minds are not transformed yet.
That's true.
I have $1 million question to you about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin has been a central focus for many traders for the last couple of months because the price of Bitcoin just went up over 40,000 on January 8th.
Yes.
And exactly 1 year ago, it was below 9,000, right? So for many traders, for many people in this investment community, the question is, do we buy, do we hold, or do we sell Bitcoin? What do we do?
Yes, that's a difficult question. With a difficult answer. First of all, Bitcoin should be a cryptocurrency, but by now it's just an investment vehicle. And as an investment vehicle, doesn't have any fundamental value like gold. And as gold as well, it doesn't respond to market movements or economic trends. And that's why it's a good protection in the case of large uncertainty, as the year 2020 was. Other than that, there's not much more that we can say as Bitcoin as an investment, because people buy and sell depending on expectations, but not depending on fundamental value.
Is it more of a long-term investment or it's a day trading instrument?
Yes, I would say it's not a long-term investment because it doesn't have a fundamental value. If anything, it's a diversification vehicle. I mean, we know when you look at the fundamentals of its prices that Bitcoin prices and returns do not move in relation to the market. And as a diversification vehicle, then is good, again, as gold, but nothing else than that. I could not put my children's future in Bitcoin at all, for sure, because it's also very volatile, and as I said, because it doesn't reflect any business fundamentals. But at the same time, it's not a crazy investment. That is, when people look at it and say, it's as crazy as gold. So if you think that investing in gold is crazy, then it is true that investing in Bitcoin is crazy as well.
How ready are central banks for cryptocurrencies
Yes,
today?
very. I think that they have felt the disruption coming from Bitcoin, Ethereum, coming from Libra, issued by Facebook. So I think central banks are embracing cryptocurrencies, realizing that it's extremely good for customers and for citizens. It's not going to replace fiat currencies, and it's going to be a major improvement in our societies by making transactions much simpler.
Which of the central banks, at the latest stage, just before the launch, which central banks, which countries?
I would say that all central banks in the world have already started projects to study and analyze the importance and the use of digital currencies. There are others who are much more advanced. For example, the Swiss National Bank or the Central Bank of Sweden and other countries. And then finally, there is a small group of countries who are ready to issue their cryptocurrencies. The People's Bank of China already announced last year a pilot project on digital currencies. Bank of Sweden, Bank of Norway, they are well advanced. The European Central Bank has already launched a consultation process for digital currencies. So I think the pandemic has delayed this issuance, but in the coming months and certainly in the coming years, we're going to see the big central banks, the Federal Reserve in the United States, the European Central Bank, People's Bank of China, Bank of Japan, issuing cryptocurrencies.
Will these cryptocurrencies of banks kind of overshadow the current cryptocurrencies that are in the market today, Bitcoin, Ethereum?
That's their intention. And in fact, I hope this is the case. Because remember, the difference between a payment token, as we call it, and a cryptocurrency or a digital currency is full acceptance. In the moment that you have a blockchain based payment system that is only accepted by a small group of people, or for example within a company, it is not a currency. For a cryptocurrency, you need full acceptance. And even Bitcoin is not fully accepted as a means of payment. If you walk around this building and you try to pay with Bitcoin, it will be accepted in very few places. So the advantage of digital currencies issued by central banks is that they are going to be fully accepted. To me, an e-franc and a regular Swiss franc are going to be identical and equivalent, and that's why I will use them.
So basically in the monetary supply there will be certain amount of printed money and certain amount of digital cryptocurrency, francs or euro or US dollar.
Yes, and that's the key question for central banks and regulators. That is, if the Swiss National Bank prints, and that's just a metaphor, prints a Swiss franc, we know how it moves in the financial system. If the Swiss National Bank issues a digital franc, it is much more difficult to move it and then to transform it. And I think the key question is then to know how many e-francs are we going to have relative to the traditional Swiss francs. That's something that we still don't know.
How it will disrupt the current payment systems? Will it disrupt the digital currency?
Yes, I mean, if you think of payment systems that go from PayPal, Venmo in the United States, Twint in Switzerland, and even credit cards, digital currencies replace all of those intermediaries because they make payments cheaper. Think about the SWIFT system that we currently use for international transfers. It's a bank oligopoly that actually is costly for the customer and it takes time. With digital currencies, I will be able to make an international transfer immediately at no cost, and of course surpassing any intermediary. So it's going to be a major disruption, and I think that's why payment systems already, they realize that there is a huge transformation happening in their business and that they're going to be moved away.
Because in the blockchain, there is a ledger, there are smart contracts, and the whole idea is to make the transactions transparent, to bring trust to those who participate in the ledger. So that means, and what you're also saying in your book, is that the third-party participants, the third-party middlemen or small commerce will basically vanish. Correct?
Yes. Vanish in the good sense. That is, don't think about people being unemployed as a result of blockchain or cryptocurrencies. It is just that they will need to adapt their business model. Because currently we have too many intermediaries that make many things costly, starting with banks, but also social networks, email systems, communication networks, even media. They intermediate in our information flows or capital flows, and they make them costly. So these players will certainly be disrupted, and as disrupted players, they will need to readapt their business model.
What kind of businesses do you think will face really this big disruption, or will have to reinvent themselves?
Yes. I mean, we know that the biggest impact of blockchain technology is going to be in the financial sector. And that's why fintech is focused primarily on blockchain technology as well, on transforming the financial sector through blockchain. But in any business that does not involve a physical good, for example, services, and the company or the business plays an intermediate role, be it in information or in other intangible assets, then there's going to be disruption. Consulting services, supply chains, financial players as well, media,
Uber?
Social networks, Uber, platforms in general, Uber, Airbnb and the like, they're all going to be disrupted and transformed for good. That is, this disruption will allow them to embrace the technology as well. So we're going to see Uber implemented in blockchain and Airbnb implemented in blockchain as well in the near future.